Hello and welcome back to Rare Trains on the MBTA Worcester line. It's been just about 6 months since the last episode, and now it's finally time for the long-awaited episode 7 of this series, so with no further ado, let's get started. This episode begins back in November when I was in Framingham, which I don't really get to visit much these days. I'm waiting for B725, the night job in this area, transferring freight from the yards in Framingham to the South Shore of Massachusetts. This train carries freight traffic for not only Middleborough, but also Cape Cod and places like Four River Transportation in Quincy. Over the past few years, B725 has been quite the behemoth of a train, requiring that CSX brings a 6-axle locomotive to Framingham to help power this train. Usually, these 6-axle units are just regular SD40-2s, but for some reason today's B725 has a rare SD40E3, which is a rebuilt SD40 with equipment for Tier 3 diesel emissions. SD40E3s are somewhat common in the state of New York, as a few years back the state funded a project for CSX to rebuild these locomotives to Tier 3 compliance, but it's not an everyday occurrence that one makes it out of the state of New York to Massachusetts. About a month later, I was out enjoying the first major snowstorm of the year, watching trains hit snowbanks in town. Of the trains that hit snowbanks, this was the one I got a good video of, just east of Wellesley Square. Not only was it a nice shot of a train hitting a snowbank, but it was also a sandwich set, which we haven't seen in a while. Unlike how sandwich sets were used back in 2020 when there was track work on the weekends, this sandwich set was built the night before the storm in Boston as a defense mechanism from the snow. Instead of having a cab car hit snowbanks and other debris on the tracks, the MBTA would rather have a locomotive hitting the debris, as they are much more resilient to hitting obstacles. This set was used for the first trains of the day, which would inevitably end up basically plowing the entire line. An engine was put on both ends of this set, just so it could easily plow snow going both inbound and outbound. Anyway, here's 1509 with the sandwich set of 1034 and 1035 plowing through a big snowbank just east of the square. As you may have noticed by now, most clips are spread out by a month or more, mostly because I've been busy with school and less able to go see trains in town. This clip is no exception, taking place more than a month after the last one, on January 23rd. On this day, I went to go see Amtrak 449, which for the first time in a while had a special unit on it. After 145 was booted off the lakeshore after about a year of constant service, the route was left with no special units to keep rail fans such as myself entertained. Luckily for Amtrak's 50th anniversary, they decided to repaint a bunch of P42s into different paint schemes. The first and easiest paint scheme for Amtrak to pull off was put on 46. This unit was simply just a regular Phase 5 P42 with an Amtrak 50th anniversary sticker on the side. Not exactly the most entertaining thing, but certainly nice to see. Anyways, here it is trailing on 449. A month later, I went out to see 46 again, but this time it was supposed to be leading 449. I went to the Charles River Bridge just east of CP11, the last interlocking for 10 miles on this line. This arch bridge, built in 1916, carries the Worcester line across the famous Charles River, and despite the tracks being quite high up, I had an idea as to how I could capture a video of 449 here. That's right, my drone. As I mentioned a long time ago, I got a drone for Christmas, and this was one of my first times railfanning with it. The drone allowed me to get a nice shot of the train from about 200 feet up. Unfortunately, the sky was an ugly gray color and 46 was not on 449, but nonetheless this was a decent shot. Two weeks later, I found another opportunity to use my drone, this time at my home station of Wellesley Square. This is 2509 with 1136, the MassDOT Blue GP40MC that was rebuilt over a year ago. This locomotive is usually used in work service on trains such as the Reedville Switcher, but today I guess the MBTA is slightly short on power because 1136 is powering a revenue service train. Not bad. Another 2 weeks went by and I decided to start railfanning a lot more. On this day I took the train into Boston for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic. I went to see two trains of interest that were both running in the area. First was Amtrak 449 with two CDOT P40s, and second was Amtrak Sevilla Liberty train set testing. The Sevilla Liberty video will be out soon, but here are the CDOT units on 449. These two CDOT P40 DCs, number 842 and 843, are some of the last non-rebuilt P40s used on CT Rail. They're still in faded Amtrak Phase 5 paint covered in Bondo from failed dent repair attempts. This is the last time we will see these ugly P40s powering CT Rail trains, as when these two locomotives come back from being rebuilt in about a year, they will be in fresh CDOT paint. 10 days later, I got word that the MBTA would be running a ballast train on the Worcester line, but unlike the usual use of a ballast train on this line, they would only be going to BL 10.8, the Riverside switch in Newton. This is because the commuter rail wanted to build a new siding to store MOW equipment, as the Green Line plans to use the current siding a lot more, and they need the commuter rail's operations to stay out of the way. This train consisted of two F40s and some MassDOT ballast cars, which after this operation will be used to dump ballast on other parts of the system. On May 2nd, I went to Wellesley Square to see Amtrak 449 with a private car on the back. This private car, the Babbling Brook, is a streamlined New York Central sleeper built by Pullman in 1949. This classic car often shows up on 449 as it's based out of Albany, much like the majority of private cars we see around here. This is the first private car on 449 since last year, and I think it's my favorite that I've seen. On May 7th, I went for 449 again, expecting another CDOT P40. Instead, I was greeted by a solo P42, which, although uncommon, was not a CDOT P40. Two days later, on the 9th, I went for Amtrak 449 again in search of that same CDOT P40 number 836. This time, I tried a new spot in Wellesley that I had never tried before. This is behind the Volkswagen dealership near Linden Square. I have been back here a few times, but I've never really railfanned here much. This is a small parking lot for employee cars and a fence keeping vehicles from backing onto the tracks, but where I'm standing it seems that the fence didn't do its job, because it appears that some truck ran over the fence, flattening it. I'm not complaining though, as it provides a more clear view of the tracks, but anyway, here's 449.